All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here, and welcome back to Meta Monday, the weekly series where we analyze the Pokemon Pocket metagame and keep you guys up to date on everything going on in the competitive world of Pokemon Pocket. This past weekend was our 20th community tournament, PMPT number 20, and yeah, it was a great one. Valentine's Day weekend, lots of stuff going on. We still had almost 500 players come out and compete. This was the third tournament of this Fantastical Parade B2 season. A lot of interesting results. We're going to break it all down in today's video. We'll talk about the deck list, we'll talk about the final standings, and then we'll break down all of the metagame data, and we'll give a full reflection of what's going on currently in competitive Pokemon Pocket. But before we get into it, you got to go register for PMPT number 21 this upcoming weekend. It is going to be, February 21st at noontime. This is the fourth tournament of the B2 season. This is the last tournament, actually, I believe, before the next set will likely be releasing. It's rumored to come out on the 26th. In fact, we should get an announcement this week, which is very, very, very exciting. Anyway, $150 cash in the prize pool, and like I said, it's the last one of the season. Fantastical finale. Go ahead, go register. Links down in the description below, and probably in the comments. All right. Anyway, here are the standings. These are the results of our tournament this past weekend. Here we go. And there they are. Yeah, okay. So actually a little bit different, than what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Now, Godi here from Indonesia does secure first place for Hydreigon and Mega Absol. This is like the first time Hydreigon's won since PMPT number 9, which was like multiple months ago. So shout out to Hydreigon. Finally, it's been pretty dominant all season. I think it is definitely, the most played deck so far this season. It's the default deck currently in Pokemon Pocket. Very, very strong, absolutely toxic in a lot of ways with the, inherent high roll nature of Hydreigon, plus the lucky ice pops now added to the deck list. It's a crazy one. It really is. Anyway, though, I think Hydreigon lost in Grand Finals the last couple of weeks, so finally kind of getting first place here. And I think that makes sense. It'd be weird if we went throughout the season and Hydreigon actually never got first place, but here we go. Shout out to Godi. We'll take a look at the decks in a little bit. Next, we have Gildlin, I don't know how to say the name, from Canada, 11-2-1, second place, playing Mega Altaria and Greninja, which is, another deck that has been at the forefront of the metagame for quite some time. This season has really kind of stormed back as a really significant deck into just so many other things actively played in the metagame right now, namely Hydreigon. I actually really thought that this Altaria and Greninja player would actually get the win this weekend, but ended up losing to the high roll god himself, Hydreigon, in Grand Finals. But a really great run. And I don't believe that Altaria Greninja has won a PMPT tournament before, but this weekend it saw a ton of play, and I really thought this would be the weekend that it won. But a Grand Finals appearance there. Shout out to Gildlin from Canada, a really great run. Next up is Froggy X Wawan, Wawan S from France, 10-2-1 top 4, playing Daycare Kangaskhan. That's right, Kangaskhan Darkrai, which is a really interesting, a very surprising performance. In fact, him as well as Brago TCG playing Giratina Darkrai. So double Darkrai decks in top 4. It would have been a crazy outcome if both of those players made it into Grand Finals and we got a Kangaskhan versus a Giratina Darkrai Grand Finals. That's something nobody would have expected. The third weeks of these seasons are oftentimes kind of the most fun weeks because that's when like the biggest surprises happen, is typically in the third week. So really great, really awesome performances from both of these players. Really cool deck lists. I know that Daycare Kangaskhan has been pretty popular. I think it's definitely not a bad deck list. I just don't know if many people really considered it to be like at the very top of the metagame. This might be the best overall performance this deck has had so far this season. And then Giratina Darkrai there, Brago TCG from the United States. Top 4 with Giratina Darkrai. Again, the first time Giratina Darkrai's gotten top 4 in months. I mean, this is a deck that kind of entered back into the metagame this season a little bit, I think because of Lucky Ice Pop and some other maybe, slight meta changes. But very cool. Shout out to Brago TCG. We have PGX Gaze Kaida from Spain, 10-2. And then we get into top 8 here. This is Altaria Chingling. A lot of different Altaria decks seeing play. In fact, we actually saw Creamy Lotion down there in 7th place from the United States playing Altaria and Aegislash, which is a really, really cool deck list. We'll break it all down here in a little bit. Cranfire, of course, in 6th place. Don't want to forget about him from Spain playing also Hydreigon. What's interesting is that Hydreigon won the tournament this weekend, but this might have been actually I guess Hydreigon actually performed overall worse this weekend than it actually has the last couple of weekends. So I know everybody kind of looks at what's at the top of the standings and they kind of define the metagame based off that. But if we go into the metagame data, which we will at the end of this video, you will see that Hydreigon struggled this weekend a lot more than it did in past weekends. And that's because, I think at this point it's at the forefront of the metagame and lots of counterplays developing. But anyway, very cool. Creamy Lotion, Aegislash getting a top 8 appearance, maybe for the first time at a PMPT tournament, which is pretty cool. And if we go down, we have Tuningiri from Japan in 8th place, so Suicune Greninja did sneak its way into top 8. We had a bunch of different decks, in fact. We had, 7 different decks in top 8, which is really cool. Very healthy metagame. And when you look at it like that, I think this season, actually is pretty cool. I don't think anything really came out in Fantastical Parade that really blew our socks off in terms of a new archetype. But this season specifically has been very balanced, right? We have a lot of really, really strong cards and strong decks. We still have Altaria. You can play with Chingling. You can play with Greninja or even Aegislash, as we saw here. We still have Suicune Greninja. We still have Hydreigon, but we also have Giratina Darkrai that came back in a little bit. Kangaskhan is definitely a strong card as well. So a very, very balanced metagame, especially in top 8. 7 different decks in top 8 is extremely cool to see. And I think that's just a testament of how, I guess, the players really do develop the metagame. And I think that us running this tournament every weekend, and by us, I mean the judges and the casters and the moderators, everybody that actually makes this possible, I think is really good for the competitive community. And I think the players definitely do a lot of work in kind of progressing the metagame forward. So it's going to be fun to take a look at these decks. If we scroll down, we see a lot more Hydreigon, a lot more Altaria. Those were, of course, the most played cards this season, or sorry, this tournament, but also this season. So anywhere from 9th place all the way down to, I guess, 16th place is basically all of those decks. We did have a Snorlax here, Castro 37 from Brazil, making it into top 18 or 18th place, which is pretty cool. If we go down, there was a Charizard in 23rd place. And yeah, I mean, most of the variety we even had right here, Altaria and Unknown. Mimikyu got 37th place. We had a Skarmory deck in 40th place, which is pretty cool. Not a whole lot of Magnezone or Icorios. That's been the case this season, mainly just because of Hydreigon's dominance and how much people are playing it. But yeah, that's the overall standing. So if I didn't give anybody a shout out there outside of top 8, I apologize. But, big shout out to everybody. And thank you guys so much for competing. And congratulations to everybody and their performances this weekend. Let's get into the deck lists. We'll spend the next a little bit of time talking about the decks specifically. And then at the end of the video, we'll break down the metagame data. Comment down below what you guys thought of these results, because I'm actually really happy about them. I know people thought I was going to go nuts because Hydreigon ended up winning, but honestly, I'm not really upset about it. It had to win at least once this season, and I think the overall standings of this tournament were very diverse and very, very cool. So I love to see it. I thought this tournament was a great reflection of the metagame, and I think that this is honestly a pretty healthy metagame, aside from all of the high roll Hydreigon shenanigans, which really is kind of a toxic deck. But it didn't actually dominate the tournament this weekend too crazily. So we'll talk about that at the end. Anyway, let's take a look at the first place deck list. Gotti here, Gotti, I don't know, from Indonesia. 12, 1-1, first place. And this is going to be pretty standard. This is kind of what we're seeing these days. Double Poison Bard, Nihilego, Hydreigon, Mega Absol. Nothing too crazy in here, but we are playing Lucky Ice Pops. And, I do think Lucky Ice Pop is inherently a very non-competitive card. It definitely is something that doesn't feel great, especially when people get lucky. And sometimes Lucky Ice Pop does get lucky, and it's a very, very powerful card. Useful in so many applications, right? Not only can you heal up Hydreigon after you roar in unison and go back up to 140 HP, sometimes you get 2 Ice Pops, you go back up to 150, that's inherently broken. But in the late game, when you go into Mega Absol to finish off the game, sometimes those Lucky Ice Pops can keep Absol alive for more than 2 turns, and that is a really, really big deal. And this is a deck list that, of course, you can still go turn 2, Roar in Unison, Hyper Ray, Hydreigon, which is always insane. It just feels kind of crazy when that happens, and I think that's the inherent thing about this deck list is that, it's a strong deck. It's got a lot of moving pieces here. Poison Barb, Nihilego, it's a ton of extra damage, especially against some of these Mega Pokemon that like to sit in the active spot. Guzma has become a little bit more popular, but it's still such a strong strategy. And because of the Rare Candy Hydreigon's ability combo, it allows you to just do a bunch of damage on potentially your second turn going first. And that's just the thing about Hydreigon. So inherently, this is high roll. This is the embodiment. This is the final form, so to speak, at this point of high roll strategies. Rare Candy is kind of a toxic card, but you'll notice this deck doesn't play any middle evolution. So, I've been kind of singing the praises of Chingling all season. And again, I was surprised that Altaria did not win in Grand Finals because of the Chinglings in the deck, but high roll is high roll. Even if you're playing Chingling, you can still get bodied. And, quite frankly, the Poison Barb Nihilego stuff makes it kind of difficult for Chingling to do what it wants to do. So a really, really strong deck. I think it's got so much going for it right now. Sabrina, Cyrus, double Copycats, double Research, double Pokeball. It does what it wants to do, guys. It really does, and it's quite a strong deck. So 3 Grand Finals appearances in a row for Hydreigon, and finally getting the win. So shout out to Goaty. This is the deck I would play. In fact, honestly, this is definitely like the top deck in the game at the moment. But you'll take a look at the the win rates for Hydreigon. You'll see that it's really not that well positioned given the current state of the metagame, but inherently powerful. It's just an insane deck. Let's take a look at Gildan's deck. Your second place, Altaria and Greninja. And you'll kind of see what I was talking about here. Oh, wait, no. Oh, I just noticed double Jirachi, no Chinglings. I didn't even know. I thought this deck was just going to be playing Chinglings. No Chinglings for Altaria Greninja here. And unfortunately, it might have been part of the reason why he wasn't able to kind of get over the Hydreigon. That's pretty crazy. I just can't imagine playing this deck list and not playing Chinglings. I know Jirachi's a strong card. We are playing Double Cyrus. Tons of bench damage. I love the potential with it. Chingling is so good. It's so good. And these Hydreigons aren't even playing middle evolutions. I don't even think Suicune's been playing middle evolutions. You got to play Chinglings, in my mind, in my opinion. He did make it to Grand Finals, though. So you got to give him credit there. Unfortunately, I think if he was playing Chingling, probably would have had a better chance against Hydreigon in Grand Finals. But everything else about this deck, very standard. So typically what you see here with Altaria Greninja, again, a bit of a high roll strategy as far as Altaria decks go, but when you add Chinglings and you play Altaria, you're going to be a pretty consistent deck no matter what, so you still have that potential, but double Greninjas, double Cyruses, double Rare Candies, it does make the deck a lot less consistent than the standard Altaria variants, but as we know, Greninja incredibly powerful as a win condition card, and it just adds extra damage to Altaria. So I really do think that this is one of the best decks really ever. I think that players that know how to play this deck well, that get a little bit lucky drawing Greninjas, whether you're playing Chingling or not, it's just an incredible, strong deck. And I'm not really surprised at all that we made it to Grand Finals. Though, again, I am surprised we're playing double Jirachis and not Chinglings. But again, maybe Chingling stuff, maybe it's just less good because of all of the Poison Barb Legos. This deck doesn't really have room for Guzma because you want to play the Lissia in the deck list with Pokeball, because that's going to allow you, right, to grab not only your Froakies with the Pokeballs, but you can thin out the other Pokemon from your deck with Lissia. It kind of makes it a little bit more consistent, and I think Lissia is such a strong card. In Altaria and Swablu, you got to play it. So, and that's crazy. It's crazy to me. No Chingling. Comment down below. What do you guys think? Are you playing Chingling in Altaria? I would recommend it personally, but you know what? It is what it is. Jirachi's a really cool card. It really is. I mean, it's a lot of bench damage. Star Drop, Water Shuriken, Double Cyrus. Like, that is the core strategy of this deck, even though, High Roll, Hydreigon, turn 2 Rare Candy can kind of get in your way a little bit, but hey. Definitely a cool deck list. Shout out to Gildan from Canada. Next up is Wawin's deck. And again, top 4. This is Kangaskhan Daycare here. He is actually playing Oricorio, so it's not actually Daycare. I completely just, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just assuming based off the images on Limitless what these decks are, but this is actually going to be Poison Barb Oricorio kind of Turbo Lightning Mega Kangaskhan. So it's not Daycare in the sense that typically Daycare decks play a bunch of other baby Pokemon and then they play maybe Oricorio, but typically not. They just play Kangaskhan and Darkrai. So the whole point of the deck is to be like a turbo deck. This is an Oricorio deck. So very interesting to me that Oricorio finding its way here into top 4 in some way or another. So the whole strategy here is you play Dark Energies for this deck, but you play the Pichus to get the Lightning Energies onto Oricorio. Very, very cool. I should have known this because I watched him play in the stream for some reason. I don't know why I forgot. I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, very, very cool. And then Poison Barb Nihilego, which again, guys, just is such a strong strategy. It really is. Like, when it comes down to, dealing extra damage, nothing in the game kind of does it better, that extra damage modification, than Poison Barb Nihilego. And we've seen it in Hydreigon. We're seeing it in Kangaskhan now. A very creative deck. A very cool deck. Lots of one-ofs in here, which I like. We have one Lucky Ice Pop, which is inherently just a broken card. We have one Cyrus, one Giovanni, one Red. Those are those damage-boosting cards, which the effects get doubled onto Kangaskhan, so you got to play them with Kang. They're so, so good. And then we have one Serena, because we're only playing one Mega Kangaskhan, so we want to be able to get that on the bench, but we don't want to start with it, so that's what a lot of these Kangaskhan decks have been doing. Really the only application for Serena that we've seen so far. Serena's not a bad card, and I told people there's just not a lot of opportunities to play it. You really want to play Serena in decks where, you have like a basic Mega Pokemon, but you never want to lead with it, but you do want to get it on your bench. So it's a very kind of specific card, and it just happens to work really well here with Kangaskhan, right? So you're, effectively having the same amount of chances to get Mega Kangaskhan, but less of an opportunity or less of a chance to lead with it in the active spot, right? Which is the whole concept here. One Illuma, which again, I think does make a lot of sense. Being able to scoop up Kangaskhan and put it back in your hand is one of the most broken things in the entire game, and I think it's one of the big reasons why Kangaskhan is so strong. So this is a deck list that, you know, definitely takes advantage of a lot of niche aspects here. One copycat, double research, double Pokeball. It's a really cool deck. You know, I wonder if the Oricorio you know, definitely was super relevant throughout the tournament for him. But again, you know, if you get the energies on a Kangaskhan with the Poison Barb Legos, and you get the extra Darkrai pings, and you get Red and Giovanni, this is like a reach deck. This is a deck that likes to set up and then start one-hit KOing Pokemon, because, you know, if you hit Red on Kangaskhan, that's plus 40 to that 120 damage total attack. That's 160. Plus a Darkrai ping is 180 if you have that extra energy that turn. Plus, if they attack you, they're taking 10 or 20 or 30 damage from Poison Barb. It's a ton of damage. So that's what this deck is kind of doing, right? It's a bit of a slow roll setup deck, but has the potential to deal an absolutely absurd amount of damage, which I really think is kind of cool. It's a strategy that I think we should probably consider a little bit more. Wildwood, one of the best players in the game, very, very creative deck list. I love to see it. And again, like I was talking about, week 3 is where you see a lot of surprises. My favorite times of the seasons are week 3. Next off, 4th place, we have Brago TCG from the United States. Giratina Darkrai, and this is not going to be the one with Absol. This is the one that a lot of people play with Indeedee, which is definitely not a bad deck at all, because we are still playing Lucky Ice Pop. So the thing about Indeedee and when you play it in Giratina Darkrai is that it typically would add a lot of inconsistency to the deck, but we can play Peculiar Plaza, which is a really big upside to Giratina and Darkrai, especially given the fact that sometimes it likes to kind of move in and out of the active spot. Some people play Dawn in this type of strategy, which is pretty cool. I've seen that before for sure, but Peculiar Plaza, definitely a really nice card. You can tech in Indeedee, makes it a little bit, you know, a little bit easier. You know, we can never attack with it because we're playing Dark Energies for the deck, but it doesn't stick Indeedee in the active spot because you can retreat, which is nice. Starting Plains gives all of these Pokemon 50 plus HP, which is inherently really, really good. So you can play double Rocky Helmets and get the plus 20 HP. Another nice buff to Giratina Darkrai. Not only that, but Lucky Ice Pop. So we're playing Indeedee and Lucky Ice Pop. These Pokemon have, you know, plus 20 HP. Indeedee's protected on the bench with Protective Poncho. It's Giratina Darkrai, but kind of leveled up, which is really cool. You know, I think that the core of Giratina Darkrai is strong. I think Starting Plains, Peculiar Plaza, Protective Poncho, Lucky Ice Pop, all of these cards are things that you can throw into Giratina Darkrai and actually just sort of be much stronger just in general, you know, and I like those sort of general buff cards to archetypes like this. So I know not everybody loves Giratina Darkrai, but it's cool to have it back in the metagame and you know, seeing it paired with Indeedee. Some people play it with Mega Absol. Either way, definitely a really, really fun deck. One Cyrus, one Sabrina, one PCL. So a bunch of different healing cards in here between Indeedee, Pokemon Center, Lucky Ice Pop. But, you know, as we know here, you know, the Poison Barb Nihilego stuff is pretty common. Maybe you kind of tech in a Guzma instead. I don't know. You know, it's interesting. But Starting Plains on Giratina EX does allow it to live a hit from Hydreigon, which is a very, very, very big deal. Indeedee's also just nice with Giratina because you can attack and then heal and then attack again, so you're not KOing yourself really ever with Giratina, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, it's Giratina Darkrai. You know, I'm interested to see kind of what matches he played throughout the tournament. It looks like he lost one to Suicune, lost one to Hydreigon, but beat a bunch of them along the way. So if you were kind of curious whether Giratina and Darkrai could compete with basically all of the other top meta decks, it beat a bunch of Altarias, was undefeated into Altaria, which is crazy. And you're not really worried about Chingling at all either, which is really cool. I guess other than like Pokeball and getting your Pokeball shut down, but very, very cool. An awesome run. These are really cool decks. These are super cool decks, and I love it. I really do think the metagame has so many strong cards. Pokemon Pocket has no shortage of broken strategies in the game, so it's cool to see a lot of them see play. Here's going to be more traditional Altaria deck, no Indeedee, because again, I think that now with Training Arena, we're going to be playing Altaria a little bit differently, right? You still want to play with Chinglings, and you're still going to play the Lycia package. This is a deck that is basically like Altaria-like Toolbox, is kind of what I would categorize this as. A bunch of 50 HP Pokemon that we can thin out of our deck with double Lycias. We have Sabrina, we have Cyrus, we have Copycat, Red card, a lot of really cool stuff here. Even a Lucky Ice Pop. Again, Lucky Ice Pop is inherently a broken card. It's kind of just one of those things where it's worth to play it in almost any deck because you have the potential to just win off of getting really lucky with your Ice Pops. And Training Arena is going to give Altaria that ability to hit for 140, which I think has gone a long way for pushing Suicune a little bit out of the metagame, in my honest opinion. It's also really good into Hydreigon, right? Because if they do Lucky Ice Pop or have, they don't play Indeedee, but if they only get one heal off of Ice Pop, then they go up to 140. So it does still allow you to pretty consistently revenge KO on a Hydreigon, which is a really big deal. And of course, as we know, Chingling broken, Jirachi, a really nice card. Klefki and Comfey. These are Comfey. These are really cool cards. So Klefki is basically Guzma, but it's searchable. So I love Klefki. I really, really do. I think that it's a really great card. It's mostly, I think, was used back in the day to kind of take off giant capes from Suicune. So it's probably still going to be useful in that sense, but also to get rid of those poison barbs, right, in Hydreigon or those rocky helmets in most other decks. So really, really cool. I absolutely love Klefki with Lissia in Altaria. I think it's a really great card. And then Comfey, which again is just sort of also more counterplay to the poison version. So this is a really smart deck. You know, Comfey here, you can put it on your bench as long as your psychic Pokemon have psychic energies attached, then they're immune to status conditions, right? And that stops a ton of damage. It really, really does. So I love the Comfey stuff. I think it's super, super cool. A really unique deck. Again, guys, like, you know, the Hydreigon did get first place, but every other deck that we've taken a look at is very unique, very cool, very surprising. And again, there's just so many different ways that you can go this season. A lot of strong cards, whether it's Greninja or not, or Hydreigon or not, there's a lot of really strong options. So really awesome. I think the results this weekend, I was very, very happy with. I'm going to skip over Cranfire's deck. Shout out to Cranfire, though. And let's take a look at Mega Altaria and Aegislash. 7th place, Creamy Lotion. And this is definitely an interesting strategy. The thing about Aegislash is that you can't search it with like Lissia or anything. So it's just sort of a weird card that you play in your deck. It does satisfy the Mega Harmony attack condition as just being a Pokemon, and it's going to boost the damage of Altaria by 30. So it's a lot of extra damage. You can hit up to 160. The thing about Aegislash is that it's sort of like, you know, what is the plus 30 really doing in most scenarios, right? Because like if you're hitting for 140, you're most of the time going to be doing enough damage, you know, or you could just play Rocky Helmets and it'd be kind of the same thing. So I think the Aegislash stuff is really interesting. I just don't know if it's like that useful, but I suppose if you do get double Aegislash down, you can one-hit KO some really big Pokemon like Megas, which is pretty cool, right? Because you're hitting for 190. Maybe that's a big reason to play it, but the deck's going to be inherently a little bit less consistent, right? So at the end of the day, is it better to play like Aegislash with Altaria and deal more to the active, or just play Greninja, which allows you to do plus 20 to the active, or just damage a bench Pokemon and then use Cyrus? So basically in any concept that I can really think of, I would say that, you know, the Greninja stuff's just going to be better than Aegislash, but it's definitely a really cool strategy. There's really not many applications that people play Aegislash. I think it could be cool with like Mimikyu, but again, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. It works for Steel Pokemon as well as Psychic, so I don't know. Well, we'll have to just wait and see, because I think that plus 30 to the active's a big deal. So Aegislash is definitely a strong card. We just maybe don't have that many things that you would kind of choose to play Aegislash with, but you know, we'll wait and see. Double Jirachi as well, so no Chinglings in the deck. A lot of people kind of going the Jirachi route instead of Chingling, which is very interesting. You know, a very interesting thing to note here. But I suppose, you know, it does allow you to kind of maybe put some pressure on a Dino on the bench or something, which is definitely pretty cool. So yeah, I love it. I really do. Again, I don't know if I would really say like Aegislash is going to be like a top tier, you know, strategy. 9-3 though. Creamy Lotion, 7th place at a 500 player tournament. Definitely pretty cool. In 8th place, we have Tunani Giri from Japan, the highest placing Japanese player of the tournament. He was playing Suicune and Greninja, and I believe this is going to be somewhat standard, although now that I take a look at it here, I do see a starting planes. Giant Cape starting plane Suicune. Does anybody want to see a 180 HP Suicune? I know I don't, especially with an Irida and an Indeedee. So again, this is a strategy that's going to be exceedingly strong in certain matchups, but going to be completely useless in other matchups, right? Because you're effectively making it so Suicune is just not going to get 1-hit KO'd, and sometimes live 2-hit KOs, right? In certain decks, maybe against Mimikyu and things like that, which is a really big deal. So I love it. I really do. 1 Giant Cape, 1 starting planes. Now, it's only going to buff the HP of Suicune, but it will also buff the HP of an Indeedee on your bench, which can be a big deal, considering that sometimes Indeedee is a target. You know, if it just has 150 HP, maybe it's a little bit harder to KO it, maybe. I don't know. Suicune's definitely struggled a bit this season, I guess, is the reality, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think Chingling's still popular, Trading Arena, Altaria, Hydreigon now with Lucky Ice Pops. There's a lot of stuff going on that has kind of pushed Suicune out of the meta. Some people are playing Protective Poncho. It never really was that popular even from the beginning of the season, and I think people just have kind of gone in different directions so far. But a very cool deck, and starting plans definitely kind of crazy with Suicune. And then we had Dragon Pini, Dragon Pini, I don't know, from Argentina, 9th place, also playing Suicune Greninja. And yeah, we had, you know, some other Altaria decks down here. Let's take a look, though, at Castro 37 from Brazil, 8-1-1, 18th place, playing Snorlax Indeedee. Let's take a look here at this Snorlax Indeedee deck, because yeah, whether it's Snorlax or Steelix that got top 4 in last weekend's PMPT tournament, it's interesting because this whole concept here of these sort of Indeedee, like heavy helmet tanking decks is actually really viable. It's very strong. You do auto tie, I guess, against Oricorio. You can never win, which is, it never feels great. People don't really gravitate towards decks that just can never beat Oricorio, because sometimes you're going to hit Oricorio and it doesn't feel great. But anyway, like, I think Lucky Ice Pop really put some of these decks over the edge, whether it's Steelix or Snorlax. And again, I think they're both good. Snorlax is a little bit more consistent, but just can't beat Oricorio. Steelix a little bit more, you know, intricate in terms of getting it set up, but, you know, the Onyxes can KO Oricorio. So that's kind of the main difference between the two. But yeah, Lucky Ice Pop thrives in these types of decks, because when you're taking effectively 60 less damage every turn, you know, just getting like 1 or 2 Lucky Ice Pops off is like a really big deal, and it allows Snorlax to survive for a very long time. So the whole concept here, starting planes, 180 HP Snorlax, heavy helmet that's minus 20 damage, plus full mouth manner ability that's healing for 20 every turn, plus Indeedee it's healing for, I guess, 40, 60, I don't know, every turn. Plus PCL, plus Lucky Ice Pops. You know, we're ponchoing our Indeedee so they can't get brought up from the bench. Like, this is a deck that, again, I think these types of strategies actually do quite well into Suicune and Greninja, which is a really interesting thing to note, right? So it's just another layer. And again, there's no reason why these decks couldn't have existed before this season, but I really think Lucky Ice Pop put them over the edge, and then Protected Poncho, right? So you can kind of really build up this Pokemon in the active without just sort of allowing your opponent to kind of go through your Indeedees with double Cyrus Greninja, because Protected Poncho saves it. So it's cool. Like, some people say that Poncho hasn't been relevant this season, but it really has. And decks like this, honestly, completely do nullify a lot of the Greninja strategy, so you have to keep that in mind. Another reason why I think Greninja's been a little bit less common, but Hydreigion's been a little more common. And again, this is a deck that can beat anything other than Oricorio, I suppose, but it's a very interesting deck. It's a very interesting strategy. And like I said, I mean, Lucky Ice Pop, I think, really brought this type of deck over the edge. It's really crazy if you think about it, right? I mean, that this type of deck can exist and be exceedingly difficult to get around for certain strategies, right? If you're not hitting, if your Pokemon don't deal 130 plus damage, like, you're not going to win, because like you're never able to get ahead on damage. So it really is sort of an auto win deck into some matchups, but a really interesting strategy. Yeah, we have a bunch of other cool stuff that saw play here. They didn't get too high in the standings. We see a Buzzwole here, 48th place, a couple Mimikyus down here, a Skarmory in 40th place. All stuff that we can cover later this week, but again, the new set will be announced in probably just a few days, likely Wednesday or Thursday, so we're going to be looking forward to that once it announces. But anyway, that's all of the deck lists here. Now we're going to break down the metagame data. We're going to kind of get to the bottom of how things are actually developing of the metagame. I think average win rates and percentages and matchup spreads, all of that stuff is really relevant. So if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, stay tuned, because this is the information that's useful. You know what I mean? This is the stuff I look at every day in all of the tournaments. So here's the metagame tab, and let's take a look at it. Hydreigon down a little bit in meta share from about 16% to 13%. Still the most played single archetype. Had about a 50% win rate, 182 to 175 6 ties, so a little bit above 50% win rate. Definitely not a bad performance, but not nearly as crazy as we've seen it do or have over the last couple of weeks, for sure. Second is going to be Mega Altaria Chingling at almost 12% meta share, 161 to 145. That's a 52% win rate, so Chingling Altaria did do very well and was popular. Suicune and Greninja, though, almost 10% of the meta share, so it has gone up. It was only about 6% the last few weeks. Goes up to almost 10%, but struggles, you know, a 47% win rate. I really don't think Suicune and Greninja is very well positioned, which is crazy because it won the last couple of weeks. So I think that might have influenced people's decisions to play it this weekend. But as I've been saying, I really don't think Suicune and Greninja is nearly as good as it has been. In this weekend in particular, you take a look at things like Hydreigon and Suicune, neither of them really performed that well. Although Hydreigon did win the tournament, it didn't have like an absolutely dominant performance. But Altaria here did well, was almost 12% meta share. Altaria Greninja, 8.5, 55% win rate, 123 to 196. So Altaria Greninja did very, very well. And then behind that, we have Altaria Gourgeist at 52% win rate and a 4.5 meta share. And then we have Altaria and Indeedee, excuse me, also 51.5 meta share and 3.5%. 3.5% meta share and a 51.5% win rate. So when you add up all of these Altaria decks, they add up to be like 25% of the metagame or something crazy. So realistically, Altaria by far the most played Pokemon. And if you combine all of the Altaria strategies, even though they're all very different, Altaria by far the #1 most played deck. And again, I say this all the time, but the main downside to Altaria is that there's not one definitive strategy that everybody plays, just like there is with Hydreigon and Suicune and Greninja, which makes people, I think, have a different definition of how well or how strong Altaria has been. Now, it hasn't won any tournaments, PMPT tournaments this weekend, but has had exceedingly good win rates and performances basically all 3 weeks. So there's a reason why I've kind of consider Altaria to be like the #1 deck in the game, because it, or #1 Pokemon in the game, because it really is. It's very flexible, very consistent, and it is just inherently incredibly strong. So Altaria was the most played Pokemon, by far the most successful Pokemon as well. Greninja, Suicune also struggled. Magnezone, Oricorio struggling. Steelix struggled. So Steelix definitely had some consistency problems here. But look at this. Kangaskhan Darkrai. 10 people played it, 2% of the meta share here. 37 and 28. That's a 56% win rate. So a great performance for Kangaskhan and Darkrai. Blaziken still here and still being a somewhat decent choice, whether it's Heatmore or not. Both of these had winning records and saw a little bit of play, so shout out to Blaziken for being definitely a respectable deck. Buzzwole, unfortunately, wasn't able to enter into the metagame. I think just too many other things like Altaria really do wall it, but Buzzwole is uniquely good into Hydreigon, but a 33% win rate, so it did struggle with the 6 people that played it. Charizard here, about a 45% win rate, just like Charizard has always been since the dawn of time. If we go down here, though, look at the 4 players playing Mimikyu this tournament. How come only 4 people are playing Mimikyu? It's really crazy to me. I put Mimikyu very high on my rankings, 21 and 9. The total record for these 4 players is 21 and 9. That's a 67.5% win rate. So a very, very strong performance for these few Mimikyu players. I think Mimikyu is very, very good. I think it's definitely one of the best cards, if not the best new Pokemon to come out of Fantastical Parade. So hopefully Mimikyu sees a little bit more play, gets a little more respect, you know? Kangaskhan definitely, you know, people just enjoy it maybe a little bit more. It is a mega Pokemon, but Mimikyu is very underrated. Very, very, very underrated. Nothing else here really stands out too much. Greninja and Kangaskhan here, 11 and 6. I think that's the Oricorio version. Did do pretty well. Yeah, that's pretty much the metagame tab here. The one Mega Altaria Aegislash player, 9 and 3 was kind of the outlier. Let's take a look at Hydreigon's matchup spreads, though, because this is what I'm actually pretty curious about. We see, again, 50-50 into itself, 17 and 20, so losing record into Altaria Greninja, 14 and 19 into Chingling Altaria. So as we know, Chingling definitely good in the matchup. 50-50 into Suicune, which has kind of been the case this season. Altaria and Indeedee about 50-50, but a winning record into the Gourgeist version. So I think the Gourgeist version is definitely falling off, maybe not doing that well into Hydreigon, so people are kind of electing to play Greninja or Chingling with Altaria, but the Gourgeist version is definitely interesting in general. Magnezone, 10 and 1, yeah, so Hydreigon loves the matchup into Magnezone. Poor Magnezone Oricorio. Just never really had a shot this season, which is tough. Does really well into Blaziken, I suppose, or did do well into Blaziken. Yeah, I mean, pretty balanced matchup spreads across the board, especially when you look at, you know, all of the most played archetypes this season. So Altaria really is the answer. And I think that, you know, this weekend was kind of the difference in some scenarios. Like Hydreigon ended up beating Altaria in grand finals, but it could have easily lost. We would have taken a look at this metagame very, very differently, right? So it's important to note that Hydreigon did beat Altaria Greninja in grand finals, but has a losing record against Altaria. So that's important to note, right? It could have gone the other way very easily. Well, I guess technically, you know, it had a 43% chance of winning, which is not 0 for sure, anywhere close to 0, but it's just important to note, right, what the reality of the season is for sure. Let's take a look at day 2 and the day 2 conversion rate. So Hydreigon, again, pretty standard here, only 15 or 16% of day 2, so it didn't have an incredible day 1, but did perform very well in top cut, 28 and 13, which is crazy. Mega Altaria Greninja did well in day 1, went up to a 13.5% meta share. Altaria Chingling went up a lot in day 1, so it performed very well. In day 2, all of the Altaria decks performed pretty standardly in day 2. And that's because, you know, that's just how they are. Like, they're not going to do much better in day 2 than they do in day 1. They're just consistent decks. Suicune here, 18 and 10. So Suicune did well in day 2, but kind of struggled in day 1 and throughout the entire tournament. Big outliers here, though, are going to be the Aegislash player who went 4 and 1, Giratina Darkrai went 6 and 2, and then Dark Kangaskhan here went 7 and 3. So those are definitely big outliers for sure for decks that actually performed well in day 2, which is pretty cool, even though there weren't that many people that played them, quite frankly. So a very balanced day 2, tons of different decks actually that made day 2 and made top cut. Nothing above 16% meta share, which is pretty impressive to me. So a very balanced metagame. The decks that people played and the interactions between all of those decks this weekend were very balanced and very open, right? I mean, really anything could have won this weekend, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And I think the standings kind of reflect that. Again, 7 different decks in top 8 is definitely really cool to see. So there it is, guys. That's Meta Monday. That's the metagame. I would say Hydreigon is still going to do Hydreigon stuff. If it's the most played deck, it's going to have a great chance of winning just because it's high roll and so many people are playing it. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for all of these Altaria decks for things like Dark Kangaskhan, Giratina Darkrai, Suicune's still here a little bit. Mimikyu, definitely underrated for sure. But that's kind of the metagame currently right now. I'll be curious to see, you know, when this new set comes out, when they announce it, if the new strategy, if they actually kind of go above and beyond and give us something that is like inherently like super broken, because it's been quite some time since we've had like a new tier 1 or tier 0 deck enter the metagame, right? It is still in a lot of ways Hydreigon, Altaria, Suicune's all kind of on the outs at the moment, based around Fantastical Parade. This is all stuff, to be fair, that I kind of predicted immediately, and I'm not gonna like toot my own horn, but if you go back and you see me talk about this set, it was all, oh, like, hey, this is all good against Suicune. I think Suicune's gonna go down, but I was like, well, everything's bad into Hydreigon, so Hydreigon's gonna pop off, and that's exactly what happened this season. So I will have to see how the meta progresses into this sort of next season when we get the new cards, but I'm really excited about it. And again, guys, definitely go play and register for the Fantastical Finale PMPT 21. So, and I know by the time this tournament comes out, we'll already know about some of the new cards. This is the last tournament of the season, and I know Ranked will be wrapping up shortly after this, but come out and compete. I think that you have a chance to win this tournament with basically any deck at this point because the metagame's so wide open, which is pretty cool. And honestly, guys, I'm just really excited, and I'm happy we're able to bring these tournaments to you guys because it's a whole lot of fun. And I love Pokemon Pocket, even though Hydreigon is super toxic, quite literally. I think that this metagame and Pokemon Pocket in general is actually pretty cool. I made a video a couple of days ago talking about, like last week, I talked about how like none of the new stuff from Fantastical Parade like ended up being that good. But I don't think it was a set really based around like adding like any broken new card or strategy to the game. It was about sort of, you know, manipulating all of the stuff that currently existed, which is not what I expected from B2. As a set, but hey, it's what we got anyway, so we'll see what happens in the next set. I'm really curious, but anyway, guys, that's the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys later. Peace out. Have a good one, and yeah, bye.